Gungi has made his debut in the Bad Batch, and we're here to talk about that and so much more. What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to Sector for Nerds. I'm Ryan Brower, and today I'm here to give you guys my thoughts on Star Wars The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 6, Tribe. But before we do that, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, head over to my second YouTube channel called Top 10 Character Moments. I'll leave a link in the description below. It's a place where I solely make top 10 videos on my favorite characters, best moments, and why I like them so much. Let's get into this episode. So, when I saw that this episode title was Tribe, and I saw the cover photo, right, because there was a Wookiee on it, and I'm like, yeah, because I was thinking about it last week as well. If this episode's called Tribe, this could potentially be about a bunch of Wookiees, and we know of a certain Wookiee from the Clone Wars that's supposed to be in this show. Interesting. And then freaking, oh my god! I have been waiting what feels like 40 million years for this shit, man. Oh my gosh. This was such a really good episode. I don't even know where to begin because there's so much that I want to talk about. I think the first of which, I guess we got to talk about Gungi, you guys. Like, for those people that haven't seen the Clone Wars, this episode will mean nothing to you. And this episode, well, I shouldn't say maybe means nothing, but it won't mean as much to you. And this might just be like another filler episode for you, just like last week. And I can already see the social media comments and stuff being people saying like, oh, it's filler and everything. And while I don't necessarily disagree that this wasn't filler, because I don't know how much like implication this episode is going to have on the rest of the series, but this is how you do filler. You do it with characters that people know of from other events that have happened in lore. Characters that people want to see more of. Planets that we want to see more of, such as Kashyyyk. Bringing in Wookiees, which are like a very popular species in the Star Wars universe. People love Wookiees. Massive, massive difference between last week's episode and this week's episode. Filler can be good, and this is proof of it. This is how filler should be done. Because I know there's a lot of people that associate filler and think like, oh, filler is bad. But like, not all filler is bad. Like, there's a lot of like, quote unquote, filler episodes in television shows that I watch that I really enjoy. This was honestly my favorite episode in the Bad Batch. It's a toss-up between this episode and the episode with Crosshair and Cody, just because that one was so good too. I think that episode with Cody and Crosshair was much more story-driven, but this episode was just fun. I had so much fun watching this episode, and like, it had been 2 weeks since I felt myself having fun. Like, the racing episode was okay, it was whatever. Last week's was terrible, and I made that known, very clearly on this channel. A lot of these episodes in Bad Batch I really enjoyed, but last week's I definitely didn't. This was a breath of fresh air. And again, if you haven't seen Clone Wars, this episode may not mean as much to you, but for me, as someone who absolutely adores the Clone Wars, it's like my favorite show ever, along with Star Wars Rebels. I love that, you guys, and I'm so glad that we got to see an episode like this. Gungi's arc in this episode, like, very much reminded me of Cal Kestis in the sense that he's on the run. I mean, granted, Gungi was captured, but once he got with the Bad Batch, he's on the run. And then there's that debate of, well, do I trust him? It's the same when Cal was with Seer and Grease. It's like, do I trust these guys? And I think the only reason that Gungi was able to trust the Bad Batch, especially because they're clones, right? So Gungi does not like clones, and nor does he trust them. So he, I feel like, had it harder than Cal did. But the fact that Omega was there, and I'm already going to get into it right away, you guys. Omega was my Bad Batch member of the week this week. So Omega's going to go 2 weeks in a row. For those who don't know, or for those who might be new, I've started a new segment here during season 2 of Bad Batch where I highlight a specific character from the Bad Batch and why I felt like they stood out the most in this episode. And for me, that character was Omega. Omega, I feel, was the only reason that Gungi was able to trust the Bad Batch as much as he did. The way that she took him in as a friend, and the way that she wanted to give him food and wanted to be there for him and said like, look, I understand, we were driven from our home as well. Our home was destroyed. So she's able to relate with him on so many levels. And the fact that they're both, I would assume, around a similar age and stuff, like, I think it just worked out so well. And I believe that's what allowed Gungi to kind of accept the Bad Batch. It's like, all right, I trust this girl, and she clearly trusts them, so I guess that means I can trust them too. Gungi looking for his lightsaber at the start of the episode, like, that was awesome, because, like, obviously he was, getting beaten up by a bunch of those droids, right? But then once Omega came in, he was able to get out of that, and then he starts looking for his saber. And then it was obviously being held by, I think, the commander droid or whatever, because then when they all get in the same room and Gungi forces that saber and Omega looks at him like, what? And then you even see like Hunter raise his head and it's like, oh, we're really doing this right now? All right, let's do this. Let's get him. Echo and Hunter had like a small bit of dialogue that I really got into in like the midway through this episode, where Echo's like, we don't even know if Kashyyyk is going to be safe for this guy. And Hunter's response was, he's a Jedi. He's not safe anywhere. And that line, like, really hit hard. I do believe that we are setting up something big with Echo, you guys. Just like the way that he's kind of been, especially since season 1 as well, where he wants to become a part of the fight. Like, he's been saying we should be doing more than just running. We should be fighting. He's been saying that ever since season 1. He's been continuing to reinforce it in season 2. I almost wonder if we're leading to an arc in this show where Echo leaves the Bad Batch to join Rex. Maybe he can, ultimately end back up with the Bad Batch, but it feels like while everyone else in the Bad Batch is kind of focused on just like laying low, not having to worry about war, but it just feels like Echo's like, no, we need to be doing more to help the galaxy and rid it of the Empire. So I think it's definitely something that I'm going to keep an eye on and something that I definitely am curious to see where they take Echo in this show. People have been saying they want more Echo, and I tell you what, guys, like, I feel something big coming. I feel it. I can sense it. Like I said before, we got to go back to Kashyyyk in this episode. Gungi connecting with nature similar to the way that Ezra would in Rebels. I don't think it was necessarily like beast control, but it was more of just like, hey, like, I'm here. I'm not here to harm you. And then the creature's like, oh yeah, cool, It's kind of like how Kanan connected with the spiders, It's not like he was controlling them. It was more of just like there was a mutual, like, hey, you're cool with being here. We're not going to kill you. There was another Gungi moment that really stood out to me in this episode. I think it was like the first and one of the only times that we see him smile in this episode. And like, it's the moment when after they get done putting out the fire, the first time around, and Gungi just looks at the trees and how, beautiful they are. And he kind of smiles like, oh, it's, there is still life here on this planet. Because he just got done, right? Like, he's obviously lost all of his family in the Jedi Order. He comes back to his home world and he sees that a village is wiped out and he just feels like all hope is lost. And that's, again, where I feel like Omega played such a big role, too, because she understands what he's going through. And just that moment of like getting to see him smile and just have that moment of, okay, everything in just this particular moment, it's good. And they have to, again, put out fires later because obviously the big enemy that they go up against in this episode is the Trandoshans. In case you don't know, Wookiees and Trandoshans hate each other. And there were even some clone troopers there as well. And there was a part of me that's like, wait, but shouldn't they be contacting the Empire about this because there's a Jedi here? They covered it up brilliantly by having the Trandoshan leader being like, it doesn't matter if I'm going to get to him first, and obviously he was obsessed with finding the Jedi. There's a bunch of cool battle scenes as well, and we get to see Gungi in action with the lightsaber, which is pretty cool. The only thing that we didn't really get to see is like him killing anybody, which like it doesn't come as a surprise to me anymore, you guys. That's just the way they do it in animation, you know what I'm saying? I do find it funny that they will try to market this towards kids, even though I feel like it's people more my age that are watching this show, if we're being real. It's the people that grew up with Clone Wars that are watching this show. At least that's what I'm feeling. Could be wrong, I guess. My man Wrecker was really enjoying the food that the Wookiees were cooking up for him. Echo at first, like the first time around they were having a meal, Echo was like, I'll pass on this. And then second time around he has some, he's like, you know what, this actually is pretty good. And then once they defeat the enemies and stuff, we get them back at the village. We hear that Gungi is like going to be accepted as part of this village, which I think is pretty cool. And we just see him, Gungi and Omega connecting with the the trees. And this was something that they actually were doing earlier in the episode as well. The Wookiees, Gungi as well, they were, talking with the trees and gaining wisdom from them and being like, what do we need to do to defeat the Trandoshans? Can these clones be trusted? The way that Hunter and Tech sort of explained it, right? Like the Wookiees and the trees, like they live together in peace and harmony. And Omega trying to like have that same connection at the end there as well. Like that was pretty cool. But another line from Hunter that really stood out to me was the line where he says, they're both just kids, but they don't get to be. Which is really sad when you think about it. It's like these are two children that were basically brought into the war. Like they really don't have a choice, right? Like, yes, technically the war is over, but they're still like, with this evil empire, it's like the galaxy isn't as peaceful as everyone thought it would be after the war. So in a way, the war still kind of rages on, and it kind of leads to the formation of the rebellion and everything, right? I mean, we know Bail Organa is going to be in this show. Bail Nick Fury Organa will be in this show. I've been doing a lot of comparisons lately on my channel between Nick Fury and Bail Organa, just like from the stuff that we've seen of him in Tales of the Jedi, and I think what we're going to be seeing from him here in Bad Batch, so that's why I say that. Bail finds out about Gungi. That's another Jedi that he can look to recruit for his cause. But I don't know, you guys. I think, Gungi for now is going to be on Kashyyyk. And as far as if we're going to see more of him, I really hope so. But I could also just see this being a one-off and being like, hey, for those that, that want to see what happened to this Jedi youngling that we saw in the Clone Wars, here's, his story and what happened to him and sort of where he's at now. I would love it if all of the younglings from that show ended up surviving, from that arc in Clone Wars Season 5 ended up surviving, and they could all reunite. I even put out a video on my channel, like, I want to say like a year ago or something at this point. Maybe it's been a little longer or less. I don't know. I've lost track of time. But it was essentially, did the Clone Wars younglings survive Order 66? And if I remember to, I'll leave a link in the description below as well. But it was basically a video where I talked about, like, man, I would love to see these guys have their own show. And like, maybe it's something that you could sort of have connections to with the Bad Batch. And that's sort of how you get that train rolling. Maybe there could be some new characters as well, like some other Jedi younglings that survived Order 66. So it is possible. I mean, there was a point in time though where I was like, but do we really want to have like that many Jedi, out in the galaxy doing stuff, especially with like how few in numbers the Jedi are. But like, I think considering the amount of, Jedi that we've, since seen and heard about surviving post Order 66, I don't necessarily think that we couldn't have a show like that. I'd love to see Quinlan Vos appear in something at some point, because I mean, there was a reference to him in Kenobi, so we know that he's still around. Oh my gosh, speaking of references, Wrecker referenced Kashyyyk, like, oh, it's been a while since we've been to Kashyyyk. I think that was supposed to be a nod to the arc that they were gonna have in the Clone Wars until that got canceled. Thank you, Disney. But that was going to be the next arc that they did with Bad Batch, was send them to Kashyyyk with Yoda. You know how Yoda says in Revenge of the Sith, good relations with the Wookiees I have. That was supposed to be explained in that arc. Yeah, I could talk about this episode like this all day, you guys. I really enjoyed it. You'll have to let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I think this one, I can see this one getting some mixed reactions. I can see people that really enjoyed this episode, and I think the people that really enjoyed this episode, I feel like are also going to be a lot of people that really enjoyed the Clone Wars. But if, let's say, you haven't watched Clone Wars, or you're maybe not necessarily a fan of Clone Wars, then I can maybe understand where this episode might not mean as much to you. But I mean, even still, you guys, like, putting Clone Wars to the side, I think this episode still told a decent self-contained story. And I thought it was so good. But again, it's all about, this is just my opinion. You guys are all entitled to yours as well. So let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments below. That is going to wrap us up for today, you guys. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others to help support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.